show me the money. ABB wants us to pay for it, and then they'll pay us back. And a certain supervisor here, I mean, if he wants to say who he is, I'm happy to say, no, it doesn't work like that, show me the money. That was Supervisor Dizio. He said, no, that doesn't work like that, show me the money. So that's one of my other many concerns with the contract is they want us to pay for it. It doesn't say in their successors or assigns, it just says ABB, and there's no guarantee that we'll get Act 2 clearance.
Yeah, there's no safety there for this township at all then.
There is, yeah. We won't, if they don't get Act 2 clearance for whatever reason, whether they bug out, go out of business, or say it's too expensive, then everybody walks away. And it stays like that.
450.
They won't say that at this time until
We get our money
this is
back.
given to us.
They owe us our money
They might
back.
walk away a year later before the work is completed.
How about the 450 that was spent?
Did you have any more questions for the?
No, I don't. Thank you so much, and please arrange something with the attorney.
You're positive?
Pardon me? Let's address that in the, when we have the people, but it's my understanding that 450 does come back to the township. Ma'am?
Again, I'm Elizabeth Soldati at 15 Sandy Lane. So say that the purchasing of this property by Cecil was never a factor. Given that we now know what is in the creek, the groundwater, so on and so forth, wouldn't it be, more ethically responsible of us as a community to, essentially go hand in hand with the DEP and ABB to see that they clean this up and that it's not just left sitting open between the bony and, was that the dioxide? Wouldn't that be a better option, just to make sure it's cleaned up rather than just sitting for these children and residents to be exposed to?
That's the
I
plan.
think that's a question for your 5 commissioners versus.
A lot of people that we've spoken with have said the best thing to do is leave it alone.
But if we leave it alone, aren't the children still being exposed to the arsenic?
If you disturb it, you're gonna have arsenic flying everywhere in you. It's sucked into the school.
As an environmental engineer, please correct me if I'm wrong. It's my understanding at this point that as it sits right now, it doesn't pose a health hazard to anyone. It doesn't pose a health hazard to the students at East Elementary, to the residents of Muse, to anyone, because there has been remediation. There was a landfill section that was capped. It's big. A landfill remediation means that it was buried, but it was capped with soil on top of it. Bony pile as it sits has been remediated to a point where it's not disturbing. It's when you start digging around, when you dig in to put a footer for our public works building, that's when the issues start to come. And there's no guarantee. I'm not saying that if ABB came in here today and said, we want to clean this up, we'd say go for it. But as it sits today, it's not a human health hazard. Am I wrong?
She asked if she's wrong.
Am I wrong?
Is it posing any sort of, as it sits now, is it posing any hazard to the community?
As long, and I'll say Dave from this one, as long as people are not out there actively on the site. So if somebody was out there riding an ATV or a motorcycle. I understand, I'm just saying that kicks up dust and it creates some dust.
So shouldn't we lock the property?
I mean, that's kind of my point. These kids, they're 13, 14, we can yell at them, they're still going out there and doing what they're doing. So when they're up there on their, dirt bikes and quads, they're playing on the slate dumps like most of us who grew up here did. But now we know, they're kicking up arsenic, they're breathing it in. You're saying the groundwater's polluted, that, there's this dioxide in the creeks. So isn't it in the best interest of the people to, fence it off
I
or?
appreciate your comment, but I think that's probably more for the regular meeting. Right now is the time to ask questions of these two.
But it is a question. You're telling me they're kicking it up and now our kids are breathing it in. So is it better that the site is cleaned up or that it's left alone or that it's fenced off? What is best for the community through an environmental aspect? To please be environmental.
I mean, I think the short answer is it's obviously,
The short answer is it's obviously best for the slate pile to be covered. It's obviously best to verify whether or not
you know, the 1,4-dioxane is in the stream is a potential, you know, excess adverse health effect. But the question becomes who's responsible for that, and you know who should fix that, and that's for those guys. That's not an answer.
Yeah, that's for them to decide. I'm just saying, but you know, if, like I said, if this sale wasn't on the table, knowing that we know what we know now, it would be in the best interest of the community and residents for it to be cleaned up.
Thank you. Elizabeth, next.
Dave, is it my understanding that the DEP cannot make them clean it up on their property, but once it leaves their property, they can force them to clean it up?
DEP, the problem you have is it's a long, really difficult process to make people do that. If you have imminent threats, like somebody's drinking water supply is impacted, they can do that too. They can put an order out tomorrow. But then what happens, you know, any company can appeal an order. So it can turn into a 4, 5, 6, 10-year process while the appeals go back and forth. That's the practical matter. But they do have the ability under a whole bunch of statutes to put an order out to require people to do things. It's just how long that process can take to make itself work through the system. So I mean, effectively, they can do it, but it's really tough.
Is it also not true that because ABB owns the property and had participation in the contamination, that they themselves can never acquire Act 2 clearance, that's why they need the township to do it?
You know, that's what the statute, it's really weird, and it doesn't make sense. But the statute says that the polluter can't get Act 2 protection. But
maybe we should take a step back
done
and
all the
explain
time.
what Act 2 protection is.
Okay. Act 2 is a statute that was developed by the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection in 1995. And I kind of blithely refer to it as the Betty Crocker cookbook recipe that you have to follow to be able to get relief of liability from some environmental contamination. You know, let's just use arsenic since arsenic's out of the property. So I know I have arsenic above a standard. I've got to go through and I have to define how extensive is that arsenic, where is it, and what concentrations is it present at. So I've got to do a bunch of sampling to figure out where my arsenic issue is. I then take that characterization to the department and say, here's where I have arsenic in this little circle above your applicable standards. Everything else around it is within applicable standards. And then the department will look at my data and say, yeah, we agree with you that you've defined the extent of that contamination. Then I've got to go through a whole bunch of additional hoops as far as trying to determine, do I have human health exposure? How am I going to mitigate those human health exposures? And I've got a lot of reports that I've got to then pull together. At the end of the day, once I go through and demonstrate that I know where my contamination is and how I'm going to prevent that contamination from impacting, you know, critters or people, the department will say, yep, you're good, go ahead and do whatever you need to do. You'll implement whatever those remedies are, be it putting a building over top of the area to prevent exposure to it, be it putting a deed restriction so that I can no longer use groundwater. Once I go through and do that entire process, the department, you know, I might have spent a couple of $100,000 and I've got the most expensive sheet of paper in the world, because it's literally you end up with a 2-page piece of paper that says you now have what's called relief of liability. So essentially what it says is that the department will not come back and sue me for the contamination. They're not going to order me to go do anything. If it's determined that there's a problem, the department will then come in and step in and fix it. This is the way it's supposed to work. So that's what an Act 2 is. It's the process of getting liability relief for some contamination on a piece of property.
But I guess one more question related to that is, so if we're meeting Act 2 standard, but there's still strict requirements about what can be put up there, where it's just industrial and commercial, it's not really being, this agreement, I know we're not supposed to talk about the agreement, doesn't really clean it up the way that I think that it's being portrayed.
Yeah, there's many, yeah, absolutely. The property is restricted, and the reason the property was restricted to commercial, well, it's technically what's called non-residential, which means industrial, commercial, anything other than hospitals, schools, or residential-like structures. That's really done a lot, and it's non-residential restrictions, or I should say residential use restrictions are done a lot, and that's because DEP has a couple of different standards. They have a non-res standard, which is much higher, allowed to have much higher concentrations of constituents in place than you are for residential usage. But it's also, if people obviously have significant concerns when you introduce children into some potential contaminant, because they've got a much longer latency period. They're far more likely to get sick from something than somebody my age is. So that's why you restrict that usage to non-res, because you're preventing a lot of exposure to children, and it's much simpler and cost
But what
effective.
about, like, the purpose of the purchase of the property is to buy it for our public works guys? They're not walking into a building, and it says in the agreement that the exposure can't be for someone more than 8 hours. Our public works guys aren't walking into a building and sitting at a desk all day. They're out working outside the property. So if this is being cleaned up to an industrial or a commercial standard, why wouldn't we be concerned about their exposure? I don't think that we're really, in this agreement, cleaning it up, one, the way that it's being portrayed, or two, doing a good job of protecting them, because we're not considering that they're out there digging at stuff or potentially exposing things that have been capped or buried.
Are we talking about excavation on the property or off of the property?
What do you mean?
Well, the only thing my work is strictly related to on the property. If Cecil were to decide to go forward and continue on with this property, there would be a use restriction in that you have to put where you have impacted soils. You're not going to be able to dig into those unless you have proper OSHA training and you have proper personal protective equipment. We have people work in public works type facilities all the time, and they are pretty impacted properties. I mean, there's a couple of other municipalities that we work with that they have essentially deed restrictions on their public works facilities because they've had some kind of contamination on their property too. It's not all the time, and it is that process is protective of those workers.
With all due respect, one more thing. With all due respect, I hear that all the time. It's done all the time. It's done all the time. I don't care if it's done all the time. I care about the people in Cecil Township and the public works guys that are going up there. And you're saying it's safe, but what happens if we know we're putting them up there with no contaminants? We know that we're not cleaning them up to a standard where someone could live there for an extended period of time. So what happens 15, 20 years from now if our guys that work in public works that are 23 or 30 all of a sudden are developing cancer because we put them up with no contaminants? And I know that's a what if that you can't answer, but these are like...
No, your use restrictions, contaminants only have certain ways they only have certain pathways. Arsenic, the only way I can have an issue with arsenic is I either have to inhale it or I have to ingest it. If I can, all day long, I can touch it, it doesn't go through dirt. There's almost negligible dermal exposure. It's essentially negligible. So I have to get it into my body somehow. And arsenic is ubiquitous throughout Western Pennsylvania. It's probably the #1 constituent that I run up against. It's in residential, you have elevated arsenic concentrations all over the place. So the way you fix that is you put a cap on top of it, and that cap can be plain fill, gravel, building, paving. I just can't be exposed to. I can't get it into my mouth so that I now swallow it, or I can't inhale it. The other constituents that we have out there